How's it going, guys? We're back for episode number 6 of True Health, episode number 2 of
Beau Beards.
You're supposed to say it a couple times.
Oh, okay. And action.
Beau
Beards. We work together.
Okay.
Moderately. Kind of well.
We haphazardly went about this episode, but it actually worked out to the benefit. Sloan got a message from a colleague of ours, and I'll kind of let you tell her about the message that she received.
Oh my gosh! And this was, I get a lot of messages, and they're all very flattering.
You're famous.
Oh, stop it! But they're all very flattering, but this one really hit me hard because
you're not on Tinder anymore, right? These aren't messages on.
No, okay. I'm not swiping left or right. Okay. But this was from a fellow colleague, another female in my field, and I'll just kind of go through some bullet notes from the message really fast. I don't know her all that well. I remember her. I recall her from school. We went to the same school together. We just didn't graduate in the same class. And so she sent me a message, and she said, "Hey, I know this is going to be super random, but I follow you and your husband on social media, and I'm really amazed by you." Which, first of all, social media, highlight reel. Mm-hmm. Absolute highlight reel of everyone's life. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say especially mine. I don't like to share a lot of the negatives and the hard times on social media.
Doing hard time? Like when you were in prison?
Yeah, that definitely does not go on social media.
Yeah. We should probably...
I don't look good in stripes. Yeah. No, but then she went on to say that she owns her own practice. She's been in a few years, about the same time that we have, and that recently she's having a really hard time implementing some self-care routine for herself, and that she has some medical issues or health issues that have popped up, and that now her health needs to come first for her. And this was a quote that she said. She said, "You seem to never stray from making time for yourself," which is ironic because I'm going to tell you why that's ironic here in a second. And then she asked, "How do you take time to take care of yourself and take care of your clinic and your patients without burning out?" Which
and this is another healthcare practitioner.
Yeah.
By the way.
And Beau and I, we make it a priority to be healthy, to try to take strides to take care of ourselves. But we are not perfect in that journey by any means. But the way that I look at it is, if I can't take care of myself, how can I encourage others to take care of themselves, right?
And the adage of you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
Completely true. One of the first things that we found within the first maybe few months of practice is you give a lot of your positive energy away, let alone just energy overall, to people, because people are coming to us in pain. There's usually are people that are looking, if you just thought about A, my time, B, my energy, right? They need positive input, sometimes it's hard love, tough love, but that wears you the heck out. So if you're not taking care of yourself, you ain't going to do this, at least not at the level that we want to for very long at all.
No. And so I think that this whole message was a little ironic that it was sent to me, and definitely evidence that you're only seeing one side of things, because I could turn this message around and Beau could have said, "Wow, who did you send that to, Sloan?" I could have been the author of this message to another one of my colleagues, mm-hmm. because I'm definitely this person. I've struggled with feeling burnout already and feeling like I don't take care of myself. And I'm so lucky that I have you, that I have Beau.
Yeah, you are.
Yes, in so many different ways. But we've had the conversation where he'll look at me and he'll say, "I'd rather you not treat patients and be happy, healthy Sloan." Mm-hmm. Not that I feel like treating patients makes me unhealthy, but like you said, it really pulls a lot of the energy, the positivity out of you, because you're pouring that into someone else. Mm-hmm. And you've told me that so many times. I'd rather see you take care of yourself than take mm-hmm. care of someone else. So I've been there. I've had those lulls and those really big dips in my energy and in my health, where I've had to press pause. I've either had to cap how many patients I can see in a week or a day, just so I make sure I'm taking care of me. I've definitely capped how much success, I guess you could say monetary success, because I need to take care of me. Like I can't just burn the candle at both ends.
And that you have to define success then, which you said monetary, but like you will have no success, in my opinion, if you burn yourself out and then you're not happy because you can't even maintain that lifestyle that you're getting all your dollars for.
Yeah. Okay, so one of her quotes in the message was, "You seem to never stray from making time for yourself," which I said that this was ironic. So over the last year, I reached out to a clinical herbalist who is local to our area and just phenomenal. And
what's her name?
Cameron Strauss. She's with Deep
Roots.
Well give her a plug. Yeah, Deep Roots Apothecary. Just phenomenal. And she would harp on me every time. She's like, "Well, you have to do XYZ until you're ready to make time for XYZ. You're going to keep coming back to me with these same issues." And we do that with our patients.
Sounds pretty familiar.
Oh my gosh, like you're going to continue having knee pain until you do XYZ. And we get frustrated with patients for not taking time to do that themselves or take care of themselves, where I was that patient. I wasn't doing what she was prescribing me to do. I mean, some of the things were as simple as take a 30-minute walk to start your day. Like that should be a no-brainer. And so finally I had to tell her, like, "Hey, until I'm ready to pull back even more hours at the office and really dial in and focus on me, I don't think I'm doing you. I'm not doing you any.
Not doing justice
to her treatment. Correct.
Adhering to anything.
Yeah. So that was just the message I received, and I asked my colleague if I could take a couple days to really kind of think about it and write down. I guess I'd hate to even call it advice because I don't feel like I can even offer advice. Maybe
you absolutely can, and so. Here's what I want to talk about real quick. So you absolutely can give advice. So you got to think we learn from other people in our field.
Yeah.
So that is taking advice or knowledge from other people on how to treat our patients, which is usually technical in most respects. So Sloan and I are going to volley here for a second on some of the things that we struggle with our health, because people do see a lot of the positive, which I think the positive massively outweighs the negative in terms of health in our life. Other areas of our life, it may not be such that, great ratio, and that's where we have to seek outside help, just like people would with their health with us. I've been fairly lucky, and I really don't know what I would attribute it to, and I'm not going to beat up my mom and dad, my parents, for this. For some reason, I may know the catalyst, at a very early age, even though a lot of things I did early in life weren't really healthy, I was trying to make changes. So my mom will tell you, even when I was in high school, I was that kid that when we go out to eat, it wasn't like I'm ordering whatever was the best tasting thing on the menu. Like I was very aware of what I was eating. I look back and I'm like, well, those weren't great choices. I just didn't know. I had no knowledge base. Same thing, exercise was always a huge part of my life, whether it was training for a sport or honestly just to look good. Like probably the opposite sex was a huge catalyst or driver for that. But when I broke my femur, which was a huge reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, I also became a little chubster, right? And this hit home with me, and sometimes you have to have these it's not even a low point. It's just one of those things that is still stuck in my mind. And, maybe we'll put in some little sad music while I'm telling the story. But I remember going to a pool party when I was in like 5th grade and sitting on the edge of the pool. And this was had to be a year after I broke my leg. And I remember a girl looking over at me and like, ew, because I had rolls. And she was like, look at all those rolls. And I remember I was sitting next to Corey Gayton, a good friend of mine, and he had a 6-pack. And I was like, I looked over like,
5th grade.
It's like, I'm going to have a 6-pack. So I remember every morning and every night, literally before I got out of bed, I would do sit-ups in bed, and then I would hit the floor and do push-ups. And that was 5th grade. That hasn't stopped. So I got lucky, even though my parents aren't historically the most healthy people in the world, right? Very traditional in that fashion. So it was ingrained in me not by teaching, but by kind of a hard lesson learned of, an emotional response. So that's a big part of it. Now, on the advice part, you said, I don't feel like I can give advice. There was a Facebook post or a stream that I saw the other day, and he won't mind me mentioning him. Ben Stevens, who is another chiro up in Kelowna, British Columbia. Basically, he's known for his cynical kind of rants, which I love, by the way. But he put, why is it that we put basically the stigma on our practitioners now to be the best at weightlifting before they give weightlifting advice. So basically your chiropractor has to be an Olympic weightlifter before they can tell you anything about it. Or we perceive that the people that can lift the most weight are better at treating those people, which is absolutely not true. There are plenty of, and his example was there's plenty of surgeons out there that have never played the sport of the athlete they're working on. And he gave multiple examples, and this is a huge thread where people were talking about this. My thing is, when you just talk about general health, and I'm sure he would agree, I'm sure multiple people would agree, we are supposed to, for ourselves, live by example of health first, right? But if I am going to give advice to somebody, it doesn't always have to be firsthand. I can give probably a lot of good advice to somebody that's dealt with cancer, not necessarily how to treat their cancer, but if they've been wrecked from like a gut microbiome, muscular wasting, I can give them advice. I've never had cancer, right? I've also never had PCOS. I've never had postpartum pelvic floor issues. I can give a lot of advice on things I've never had. But all of that is coming from the basis or the premises of living from an idea or of just a principally based lifestyle based around health, right? But with all of that said, having a long term, almost going on 20-some years of trying to live very healthy, being classically trained in that, both of us now, there's still areas, even though I know the things I know, that I still don't do it. And that's probably what most people's problem is. They probably know whether it's an inherent feeling of like this isn't right, or they actually know the hard data and information. And I'll go first, and we'll go back and forth here real quick. One of the areas that I wouldn't say I struggle because I know. And could I change it? Yeah. And I have had to change. I guess I'll tell the story real quick. So when we first got into practice, we applied for life insurance. And they sent somebody to our office, and I had lab values drawn, and my liver enzymes were a little high. And not crazy high, like 15, 20 points over on both AST and ALT. And they sent me a letter that said basically like, you have to pay more money on your life insurance because of this. And I was like, what the? And I'm going to be honest, I drank quite a bit in college, right? I had fun.
We have to pay the very least for me because I was the epitome of health.
She's a woman. That's never the case. Actually, they do pay lower life insurance because they die later than us. But basically, I said, no, I want lab values drawn again. Well, they were high again. So my insurance got bumped like $8. So out of that, I actually had to get in contact with our primary care physician now, Dr. Lee St. Petrie, who's a functional medicine practitioner, and say, what's going on? I feel like I'm really healthy. And we went down a long gambit of testing, heavy metals, all these things. Really couldn't come up with a whole lot, and that's, you've heard me talk about genetic testing. We did all of that. And even with some of the interventions that she gave me, I had to kind of still figure it out on my own because not all the things that seemed that would have worked were working at all, and some of them made me worse. So I kind of hit like almost like an unexpected health concern, which maybe it wasn't super concerning, but I was like, I'm doing everything that I think is right, and something's still going wrong from a physiologic standpoint. One of the things that I had to work on and I had to change massively was how much I drink. I'm by no means an alcoholic, but anybody that knows me, my parents probably thought I was at our wedding because we got a lot of bottles of scotch.
So many.
I felt like Ron Burgundy. But basically, a couple nights a week, I may have a glass of scotch or a glass of whiskey, and then we'll have wine. And then on the weekend, we may, have a few drinks. Well, if you have a little bit of a liver issue going on, that little bit of drinking, which is not even in the realm of an alcoholic amount of drinks, becomes detrimental to your health. Me knowing that's the case, I have drastically reduced that. But at the same note, like I can't tell you the last time that I got drunk, right? And I know most people probably listening to this are like, these are the healthiest people, and they're talking about getting drunk. We're real people.
Yeah.
This is called true health, not make-believe unicorn. I've never done anything wrong in my life.
We're
and
perfect.
I eat vegetables all day long and brush my teeth with a horse's tail. I don't know if that makes you healthy or not.
Don't tell them all of our secrets.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next episode. But me even knowing that, I still drink. I do it in what I think is the best way possible, and I was coaching a patient on this the other day. So I drink, but I'm going to tell you the offsets that I do real quick to try to offset, because I'm going to do the things I like to do to a certain point. Am I going to go crush a bottle of whiskey every night? No, because I don't feel good when I do that. I like to drink a glass of whiskey because of the taste. I like to get maybe a little buzz, and that's about it, right? So if I know I'm going to have that, I know I have to do a couple things. One of those things in particular is how I drink it and when I drink it. So this is tips for you. I want to give you guys practical advice today. If I drink booze during the later part of a meal or after a meal, which is when most of us do, right? You're going to have that after dinner glass of wine or a nightcap or something like that, or a couple drinks if you're going out after dinner. You have to think that your liver is giving preference to alcohol, right? So the alcohol is basically, it's not really seen as a toxin, but basically you have to use an enzyme to break down alcohol, and that needs to happen pretty fast because that's why you also feel buzzed pretty quick. Otherwise, it can have a hepatotoxic effect on your liver. Well, let's say I ate a meal that's really heavy in sugar or refined carbohydrates, something like that. I'm going to have a hard time processing that, which means a lot of stuff's going to go to fat, right? So let's say I'm trying to lose weight, which this is one of my patients I was talking to, and he's like, I usually have like a whiskey and a wine, with dinner, which maybe we shouldn't do that every night. That's another conversation. But I was like, when do you have those? He goes, after, right? Usually wine with dinner, and then I'll have whiskey. And I was like, you should try to have one before, because if I go the whole day, and let's say I work out during the day, I kind of build up a little glycogen store in my liver, right? As I'm kind of I'm not using my food for fuel. So by the end of the day, now when that alcohol hits my liver, it's a lot easier of a process, right? And I'm not going to basically, not that you completely shut down metabolism, all sugar and fat and protein. That's not how it works. There's just a little bit of a preference. So the metabolic effect on the alcohol itself is going to be first, or higher enzymatic reaction. But those after dinner drinks are not so great because we don't want to go to bed with partially digested proteins, and then we know like the meat sweats are a real thing. So I want that alcohol to be processed as fast as possible and then allow normal digestion of the rest of my food to occur. The other things are going to be like offsets through normal exercise, right? Exposure to sunlight. So all these phase 2 detoxification measures, which if you go into some of the supplements that I take, like chlorella and spirulina, these chelators are things that are going to basically help carry the byproducts after you remove toxins, if we want to call them that, versus them bioaccumulating in my body. And those are extremely common in like your greens powders, dark leafy greens. I take a couple pills. I do all of it, right? Because I've had issues. Also, just like the MCT oil that's in here is fueling my liver appropriately with things that aren't going to tax it in the same way that alcohol would, which would be your simple sugars or refined carbs or your basically just a simple carbohydrate. So there's things that I'm doing all the time. We're going to talk about some of these after we give these examples, just some of the weird fringe stuff we do. But that's one of the things I would, again, I don't say I struggle with it. I know it's an issue. I do it in the healthiest way that I think I can. And that may change as I get a little older because my ability to compensate for that or super compensate is not going to be the same. Your turn.
Oh, you're volleying it back to me now?
Mm-hmm. As I take a drink of my coffee, MCT oil, liver, superpower beverage.
You got to support that liver. How to follow that? I would say my number one health flaw is how I view myself. Just how I inwardly look at myself, whether I look at my personality or I look at my body type, my image. So that affects a whole plethora of other things within my health. So because of how I view myself, it affects what I'm eating, how I'm eating. Something that we just talked about earlier before we started recording was my kind of really deep down thought process about food, how I know better. I know that I need to eat really nutritious fats. I need to eat high caloric value for the amount of energy and output that I'm doing in the day. Yet, deep down, I consciously want to look at a plate and say, there's too much food there. I need less fat, because that's what I was ingrained and trained to think my whole adolescence, is that I will achieve the body image that I want, which, heads up, you will never achieve the body image that you want. You will always want to look different. But I will achieve what I want if I eat less and less amount of fat, which is so opposite of what I actually should be doing. So I know better. So I just think that the way I view myself really changes maybe some of my healthy habits.
And basically what Sloan's saying, and we were talking about this earlier, numerous times she'll kind of say like, oh, I'll skip that meal, or I'm going to eat very, very little.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Like if we do that and let's talk about the other side of it. So what could you do to offset that better, which is something that I've tried to coach you on a little bit, is maybe like fasting.
Some intermittent fasting, yeah.
Which she gets a little hangry. So she said,
but even more reason that I should implement intermittent fasting.
But let's take the difference of just skipping a meal versus intermittent fasting and say, well, that's the same thing. Not necessarily. So let's say I do skip a meal and it's just dinner, and then I go eat breakfast, right? So I didn't really have, per the research, the amount of time that I would need window-wise to basically tap into my own body's like fat stores and glycogen stores to use my own body's fuel or fat and glycogen stores as fuel, which is going to help basically get rid of some body fat, especially central adiposity, but then also create some cellular like autophagy, like get rid of some like cancer cells and things like that. So if I do a true intermittent fast, we get all those benefits, and that's usually like a 12 to 16 hour window of fasting. Versus if I skip a meal or have a very small meal, right? Especially if that meal is just like a little veggies and maybe some simple carbs or something. I actually slow down my metabolism. I continue to search for outside sources of fuel, which mean I'm not going to tap into those fat stores, the glycogen, especially in my liver. So I'm actually suppressing my metabolism. And like early in our career, you did a couple figure shows, which really probably messed with metabolism, immune function, thyroid.
Not probably.
Yeah, it definitely did. But it's kind of that at a lower level, and it's just kind of ebbs and flows. And you do, again, it's 90% good, 10% not great. But to offset that, I mean, you kind of know what you need to do, and you've altered how you exercise based on all this stuff. But I think the big point there is like the body morphology, and I don't think you or I would label it like body dysmorphia, but it's kind of like you're just kind of in an ebb and flow, and you try to control it through basically not changing your diet, but almost like weaning off how much food you need, which maybe, like you said, the complete opposite.
Right.
But that's a very common thing, right? Yeah. Crash diets, calorie restriction. We know all these things do not work. A diet doesn't work. Right. You just change your mentality around eating, and that's going to be your long-term game plan to actually make your health improve, right, from a micro and macronutrient standpoint, but also your energy level. And what we were talking about before, if you can improve your energy level through some of the things, your energy level and your perception of yourself through some of the things we're going to talk about, it can help you kind of push you into the bigger areas of health. Because we're going to talk about fringe areas of health, which people would be like, put the building blocks in place first. Well, I'm going to kind of talk about how you can do it backwards, in my opinion.
Well, and I do feel like I'm chipping away at breaking that mentality. And that's all anyone can do. You can't just wake up one day and be completely like...
No, and that's not
I don't
realistic
view myself that way. No, but... long-term maintain. But changing small little habits at a time, implementing some of the things that you're going to talk about, the fringe things that Beau Beards do often... has really is going to change my mindset.
So another thing that I deal with like it's a thing. Like I like sugar. I'm liking it less and less. I've done actually way, way better. But that I was kind of raised like it sounds like my parents were horrible. They're freaking awesome.
No, they're amazing, but they're American.
When
like,
my
this
mom
is normal.
and dad got divorced, I had a lot of stuff happen around the age of 10. And this is not a sob story, play my little tiny violin. It's
Cue
me
the
saying,
violin.
I try to use all that stuff as fuel. Like literally, I go back to that spot often in my mind and think, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that with my kids later in life. So if anything, it's far more beneficial than it was deleterious or negative. But I remember going to my mom's house, who didn't have a lot of money, she was a single mom at that time, was probably going through depression. Not probably, I know she was. When you looked in her cabinets, it was, which I loved at the time, and this was on both ends, so let's talk about both households. Went to my mom's, white powdered donuts, you go to the freezer, drumsticks, you look in the fridge, Pepsi. And always Tostitos. And I think my mom wrote the movie Step Brothers because she made a bunch of those microwave nachos. or microwave tortillas, right? Poor man's Taco Bell, like burrito, just cheese and tortilla. You guys know what I'm talking about, 80s kids.
Yeah, tortilla chips with the shredded cheese on top.
We didn't have Tostitos, roll-ups, and all that crap. We just had to make it. And then there was a gas station a block away. Like, we lived in, for my town, the ghetto. She's been there, and my mom, believe it or not, did a wonderful job on, like, fixing this place up. But, like, it was the rundown area of my town, which is just a small town.
I think that may do a disservice to the people that actually live in poverty compared to where you were.
The house was $20,000. So
okay, all right, okay. So we move on.
But anyways, so there's a gas station. So these were the foods that I had around, and my mom cooked dinner numerous times, which the dinners were fairly healthy. But I can remember my mom would work nights a lot of the times, and I was fairly young. I would walk to the gas station. I remember getting like chocolate covered pretzels, a chocolate milk. And, like, Yoo-hoo? That was a treat. And I could, Yoo-hoo. Rumpelstiltskin. And that was like a treat. And I would go home. And that, I kind of think I revert back to that because now Sloan knows you buy cookies, they gone.
Yeah, they're not sitting in our pantry.
My favorite candy.
Orange slices?
Yeah, you should get things, you got it right. Orange slices to this day. Now, you go to the other household I was raised in, my dad's with my stepmom. I think we were sponsored by Hostess. Like, they just showed up, I think, in trucks. Like, I could go, like, every Swiss rolls, Suzy Q's, zebra cakes. I think I collected them like baseball cards.
You know, I think, like, I just salivated a little bit when you said zebra cake. But I think if I were to actually have a zebra cake today, it would just make me, like,
your teeth are all gritty.
Yeah.
So I had all of that going on. No wonder I got chubby. Mm-hmm. But I kind of built a very heavy palate for that stuff. It also got seen as like, ooh, I remember playing outside I was very active though, playing outside for hours at a time. I remember I'd come in and crush a glass of water, grab a zebra cake. So it's kind of like if I go run on the trail for a couple hours, what am I going to go? I'm going to go get some orange slices. So it's built into, but that's not great. I don't feel great, right? And I've had to learn, like, I need to reduce that stuff. There are healthy alternatives to things that can satisfy that part of my palate, but also help my health. And like Sloan made some like Instapot, like slow cooked apples with cinnamon and like a lot of great stuff going on there, and it can satisfy that. Now, does it totally fulfill that sweet tooth? No, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I want an orange slice, and I'm gonna eat it every once in a while. I'm just not gonna crush the whole thing of cookies. I'm not gonna eat that whole bag of orange slices.
Because if you eat those baked apples over the orange slices more times than you're picking orange slices, that is greatly benefiting your health.
But it's also how I feel. If I eat 5 cookies that night, I know the next morning I don't feel as good as I did if I wouldn't.
Right.
And the younger you are, the less you feel that. The little bit older you get, you're like, oh yeah, I kind of feel like crap. Mm-hmm. I've been lucky from a metabolic standpoint. I don't feel like, ooh, those cookies went straight to my thighs. I just don't feel great.
No, they went straight to your 6-pack.
Yeah, I have a weird like sugar connection. But I also dealt with probably a little bit of like tinea versicolor there for a while.
Yep.
Right? And like went to a dermatologist that's a friend, and like, even though I know it, the first thing, you got to cut out all sugar. Oh yeah, of course, right? I know that, and I did, and it's gone. But like, that's something I still deal with quite a bit. So I need to monitor that. We're going to eat with my lovely parents tonight. My dad's diabetic. He likes to blame his diabetes on Agent Orange from Vietnam. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, Dad. It could be. But there are things that we could change, because I may have got that sweet tooth from my pops. I don't know. We'll see what his menu choice is tonight. All right. So I'm going to throw it back to Sloan. So what else do you got?
Well, I definitely have a sweet tooth of my own.
And so do most Americans, because sugar is in freaking anything processed.
Anything processed. And I grew up definitely on processed foods. I grew up in a household. It was my brother and I with 2 of the most phenomenal parents.
You guys were a fish stick house, weren't you?
We did fish sticks a lot. And I was in charge of making the homemade tartar sauce, but the homemade tartar sauce was just a bunch of processed ingredients put together. But I was like proud that I made something homemade.
It wasn't Pinterest tartar sauce.
Oh, no. But I did gymnastics, 24 to 28 hours a week. And then my brother was always a competitor, athlete in some way with football, whatever. And my parents worked full-time jobs, and they took care of both of us. And you get home at 8 you know, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and you just have to put something together really fast for dinner, or you pick something up on the way home.
There's a reason that fast food became very popular in my and your generation.
Convenience with that, yeah. So I definitely grew up with processed, and so the sweet tooth is real. But I feel like I can manage it. And I think if I really changed, like we were talking about before, my idea wrapped around food is actually being fuel for your system rather than being treats and congratulatory and excess. Like I think I could really get a good handle on that. Something health-wise that I struggle with is maybe a kind of a depressive state, like a depressive attitude, which is
probably
a reflection of a lot of diet and life choices too. But I let that guide me into kind of a sloth-like nature. I get really kind of lazy. So I love being physically active when I'm physically active, but if I let myself get in a slump where I go a few days without activity, it's really hard for me to kind of rev that back up again. Like you and I, you'll notice that start within me and you're like, go outside, go to the gym, like
whereas
go do something.
Mine turns into like anxious, like I get irritated if I don't work out.
Just kind of turn off.
Like go way down.
Yeah, I just like literally just turn the engines off and I'll be unmotivated in almost every aspect of my life. And so you'll kind of push me, and it may come with a little resistance at first, but once I get going again, it's the best thing for me. So I definitely struggle with depression, but it can be absolutely managed with physical activity. So I love diet. And diet. But I love to be physically active when I'm active. Mm-hmm. So I would say like one of my biggest health flaws is I let myself kind of go back into that hole too often.
It's the same thing that people say about diet. A lot of people it's all or none.
Yeah.
It's super healthy. As soon as you go off, you binge. It's like I got 4 to 5 days where I'm going to just eat like crap. Oh, I got to get back on the train. Or it turns into the year, and now you got to make that New Year's resolution to start like.
It doesn't need to be a train.
No.
It should just be your journey. Like it doesn't have to be
you. And that's kind of what I always try to get across to people is like, as cliche as it is, you get one of these bodies, you can do it to it whatever you want. At the end of the day, though, if you run out of energy, it may be that you like to go, I don't even know what it is. Like whatever you like to do, I would like to have the energy. And that's what I think a lot of this comes down to is like how you operate through your day, right? So if my diet and the way I sleep and the way I exercise, like even if I don't want to be ripped, I don't care about health. If I want to go LARPing, if you don't know what LARPing is, you should watch the movie Role Models.
The battle begins!
But let's say I want to dress up like a knight and go play with my friends in the park. I should have enough energy to do that. But if I go home and spend 20 hours playing video games on a computer in a dark room in front of a blue screen and eat Doritos, there's a chance that I'm not going to be able to LARP for very long. I don't know where LARPing came from. We just watched that movie a little while ago.
Yeah, I don't know where you pulled that from.
But
very funny.
I may start LARPing. I think I would be a sweet wizard. People already call me a wizard.
I would support you in any endeavor.
I appreciate
that.
I won't do it anytime soon, though. So, all that being said, it sounds like we suck, right?
Yeah.
Like we suck, right? But like I said, we try to minimize the suck.
How do we minimize the suck, Beau? Please tell me.
Oh,
what are some steps that we take to minimize the suck?
I'm so glad you asked that, Sloan.
It was like I was married to you or something.
The reason I'm talking about the Fringe stuff is I do think we have the big pieces in place pretty darn well.
Yeah.
Right? We just talked about where those little kind of chinks in our armor are. But let's not even, and this is for the people that don't even have those big pieces in place. The big pieces to me are, again, almost in this order, maybe not. Some of these are on the same level. Nutrition, sleep, emotions and like relationships, meaningful relationships. Exercise is a little lower there. Spirituality is probably in there with emotions and relationships. Mm-hmm. All the other stuff is some facet of that, right? So
I'd throw in hydration. Would you lump hydration with nutrition?
To me. But there's not very many pillars, right? And there's all these offshoots. So let's say you suck at all of those. You sleep like hell, you don't eat very well, you don't drink enough water, you don't exercise, and you're an emotional wreck, and you don't have great, meaningful relationships.
Chronic disease.
Right, America. Yeah, America. Maybe
that's
that
a recipe for chronic
That should be
disease.
a new ICD-10 code, just America. Somebody comes in like, what do I got? You got America. But let's say you don't have any of those. Most people would give you the advice, and the reason I'm not giving you this advice is because we've done it already on the show, is eat real food, move more than you don't, exercise regularly, get outside, find meaningful relationships that can help pull you away from negative relationships, find some sort of spiritual connection to something.
Turn off.
Right. If I don't have any of those, you may say, well, why would I do any of this weird stuff? Because, like I said, if your energy level is so low, maybe one of these Fringe things that may be fairly easy can help boost your energy enough. So now I have the energy to go to the grocery store to buy real food. I have the energy to go exercise. I have the energy to go to a gathering with people that are like-minded and somewhat healthy to talk to them.
Why do you keep talking about LARPing?
I didn't say a gathering.
You said a gathering of like-minded individuals.
Those LARPing mother effers looked very happy on that movie.
Ooh, we just
so
went
maybe
PG-13.
This is an explicit
Okay,
podcast.
keep going.
But let's talk about some of these Fringe health things that we do, and maybe not both of us. I tend to be more on the
You would do.
weirdo side, the woo-woo. So one of the big ones is, I'm actually going to talk about this first. Let's talk about grounding, because...
Oh, so controversial.
So controversial, because I put this on my Facebook post the other day. If you saw a picture I put up of me walking across of our slack line in the backyard with a kettlebell, I did a workout in the backyard with a kettlebell, a slack line, for the purposes of being barefoot on the ground with sunlight and just kind of doing something outside. A colleague, which I really, really like this guy, said, oh, that's silly, that's unsubstantiated. So I put up a research article, and he very smartly said, well, that's paid for by a company that sells earthing things, grounding things. If you don't know what grounding is, that means getting your skin in contact with the ground to try to offset the negative effects of like EMF. EMF there are multiple research articles on EMF, and it's linked to things like cancer and all sorts of stuff. That's one of the reasons that in the state of California, they don't allow the installation of Wi-Fi hotspots anymore. We all know about like putting a cell phone up to your ear. Like, those things are real. That's not like woo-woo stuff. An entire state would not shut something down if it wasn't, especially something so lucrative. But to offset, if you get in contact with the ground, there's a lot of offsets, especially after you've been on a plane, if you work in an office setting. But basically, he was like, this stuff is unsubstantiated. So I put another research article linked to PEMF, which is pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapy. And I said, you realize that grounding is just PEMF, just dialed way down. I didn't hear anything from him, whether he just kind of decided not to badger me anymore or whatever. But grounding is a real thing, getting in contact with the earth. I could care less, to be honest, if all the research looking on at this like negative ion offset and like balancing electron structure is wrong. You should still get outside in the sunlight, barefoot, so you're barefoot like this, right? Because that's what we did for thousands of years, and we don't do it anymore. So I could care less if from a quantum physics standpoint you don't know what's happening or you don't think that's happening. It's still good for you.
What else is in the soil that may be good for you?
So the things that we've created a symbiotic relationship with for, again, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, like microbiota, actually worms, right? All of these, the things that we used to get, one of the best ways to get B12, which we don't really in our diet anymore, is from basically the bacteria that's in the soil. So we used to eat a lot of roots and tubers and vegetables that we pull right out of the ground, shake it off, eat it. Now we're with the whole, hygiene awareness thing. We sanitize everything. We bleach, pressure wash vegetables. I tend to not wash a lot of vegetables, especially if I know where they came from. She'll attest, like, I'll eat stuff straight out of the ground or it's got a little dirt on it. That dirt, you may be like, oh, it got Roundup in it, it's got, whatever. You know what? I don't really care. Like, I'm kind of trying to live as close to that kind of earthly humanoid structure as I can. But all of these things we've been in contact with, you look at things like asthma and other, like the rampant increase in allergies. And a lot of the hygiene hypothesis basically says that we have eliminated our contact with those things so much that our body, when it comes to experiencing them, like a peanut or any kind of nuts or dander from a pet, that we have a heightened histamine reaction because we never built up a tolerance. The other one is basically the I forget the exact name. I'll look it up. But basically that kind of symbiotic partner hypothesis, saying that we learned to work for years with bacteria, worms, parasites in a symbiotic fashion. The fact that we've stripped all those out completely is actually causing autoimmune issues, because anytime we have a small insult, the immune response is huge. So grounding would be one. But again, and I'm going to post some research, some websites on all of these things that we're going to talk about today in the show notes. Look at it, but at the end of the day, I think it makes sense to people to get out into nature, sunlight. If you can do it barefoot, that is that much better. A lot of benefit to just being barefoot overall.
I know, I was going to say, ditch the shoes whenever you can.
Yeah. In our clinic here pretty soon, you won't be able to wear shoes. And
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff you could go down that I'm going to post, and I'm going to give you the top tier, just, hey, why go outside barefoot, all the way to the weird stuff on the quantum physics level of how this stuff is affecting humans. Another one that is maybe not woo-woo, but more taboo. Yeah, that's a little rhyme for you. I feel like I'm in the Wu-Tang clan. I wonder what my Wu-Tang name would be. I need to look that up. I'm going to put it in this show.
You grew up in the ghetto.
Yeah, I got to look that up. So I'm going to find my Wu-Tang name, and I'm going to tell you guys. But CBD, or basically the other part of THC, comes from marijuana. Yeah. We're probably not going to have legal marijuana in the state of Alabama anytime soon.
We will be the
pretty conservative
very
state.
Last.
And thank you, Session. They'll probably stay like that for quite a while. But I think everybody has heard about CBD at this point. The positive benefits for pain relief, depression, anxiety, sleep, all these things that CBD can help. There's multiple forms you can take it in: pill, vape, topical ointments, oils, lotions. I think there are people that are out there that are making it far better and cleaner and pure than other people. And some you may not even know what's in it. And some you got to be careful that it doesn't have the psychoactive component of THC in it in case you get drug tested or anything. Mm-hmm. But these taboo things, there's a guy in town that has a company that has CBD oil mixed with MCT oil. It's very clean, pure. I love the product. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. I use it before bed, right? We know that it basically helps kind of suppress the nervous system, kind of chill you out a little bit. But most people would say, ooh, that, it's got that taboo connotation to it. Well, not really. Like for some reason, which, yeah, we know tobacco has a lot of carcinogenic side effects, but for some reason that was a widely accepted thing in our culture for how many years now? It's becoming not taboo, but almost like just a negative, kind of aspect to that. But there's all these other things that we do, like ibuprofen and Tylenol, that are probably far more, nephrotoxic, hepatotoxic, basically hard on your kidneys and liver. And then you look at something like CBD that, yeah, it does tax your liver a little bit, right? It goes through the same pathway. It's a fat-soluble molecule, so it does tax your liver, but not to the nth degree. And in particular, if you do it in a topical form, mm-hmm. it's bypassing a lot of the enteric system. And it's just funny how we put a stigma on something or a perception, and then it's tagged as this taboo thing, which we won't get into the reasons for that. Yeah. But that's something that we use. We go topical for pain relief for injuries.
I use it a lot for menstrual cramps.
Yeah.
It's very helpful.
And even though you're he vape, I'll vape a little bit of it. We find a good source, and that's just to chill out, help us sleep. So I'd say if you're one of those people that's on some sort of tranquilizer, something like trazodone or something to sleep, one of the first things we would try, is upping your 5-HTP, which is going to help basically 5-hydroxytryptophan is the precursor to tryptophan. Everybody thinks that tryptophan is what you need to fall asleep from turkey. Well, that 5-HTP molecule helps basically create melatonin. Melatonin is what you need to stay asleep, not necessarily fall asleep. CBD acts on a lot of those same pathways, along with some other things. In particular, the CBD receptor.
Be ready to sleep.
Yeah. Some people it's
really
more effective than others.
Yeah.
I've also noticed that with some of the different products, I have different effects for sure.
Yeah.
So there's another one. Cold showers.
Sloan's
trying a little experiment with this.
It is my least favorite. Least favorite.
if anybody's heard of Wim Hof, and if you follow any of Brian McKenzie and one of my man crushes, Laird Hamilton, with his company XPT, a lot like Wim Hof is called the Iceman, right? And they've done research. I believe it was in Norway with a hospital. He's had research done on like cold exposure and how that affects the immune system. And they did trials with him and then also other participants on, I can't remember the exact enterotoxin or endotoxin that they took. I want to say it was botulism. I don't know. But basically they swallowed a toxin. He did the first time, and he was able to, through whatever process, meditation, cold exposure, it didn't affect him. They did 20 other people. All 20 didn't affect him. So pretty crazy. It's in his book. I'll put a link to his book. But cold exposure has huge boosts on immune function, helps with things like autoimmune issues. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't been fully researched that they have hypothesis on. But overall, if you just want to wake your butt up in the morning, I'll put a link to another book that I read recently called Deep that looks at free divers. And what's talked a lot about in that book is the mammalian dive reflex. So basically when our face comes in contact with water, in particular cold water, how it basically downregulates the sympathetic nervous system, upregulates the parasympathetic nerve system through your vagus nerve stimulation, which is going to slow your heart rate, slow your breathing, which if we need anything in our culture nowadays, it would be to slow down a little bit. So that's a really good reason for me to do it. So it's a good, even though some people don't quite call cold exposure recovery because it's a stress to your system. So we call it recovery. It's really not. It's like working out. It's training. A workout is stress. On the backside, you're better for the stress. Same thing with cold. It's a stressor, right? You get cold, like it's not pleasurable. The thing is the stress response, right? Reduce cortisol, all these things. So
something that we used to do a lot, we don't do it now because we're showering under freezing water, is, the big bucket of ice water first thing in the morning, and you submerge your face down for a second or two and come back up, and you do it over and over. And
that was for that mammalian dive reflex. I just cold showers. I tell you what, we were in D.C. at my sister's house a couple weeks ago. Coldest shower I've ever been in my life. And like my head hurt.
A small shower, so you couldn't avoid the cold water.
And that's when we were first going. I've done that for quite a while, and I was like, I'm just going to do it straight for a month. I'm doing Wim Hof's actual course. I've always piecemealed it together. I teach a lot of breathing classes, so I want to try everything that's out there. A, I'm telling you the truth so I can steal a little bit of it. B, I want to kind of decipher truth from anecdotal, just like this has worked for me or this is what we train people to do.
You don't want to steal it. You just want to...
I'll give credit.
You want to be able to present the best that there is.
Yeah, I want to be a thief, and if I'm a thief, I'll give credit where it's due. I think he has great stuff. Bad. But also what I'm trying to do is, I think some of the ways that he explains, which he's not classically trained, super intuitive guy, some of the things that he's saying I don't think are 100% true on how the tactics of what he's doing match up with physiology.
The physiology of it,
and that's kind of why I'm going through that. We got a couple more. So I'm going to go back here pretty soon to see Dr. St. Petrie, who we mentioned earlier, because I do my own blood testing through her and basically read my own results with a little bit of her help every quarter or so, just to monitor, which is becoming more popular as people take control of their health care, don't want to pay a bunch of money. But both of us have done this, high dose, like vitamin therapy via intravenous injection. This may seem a little fringe just because not many people do this, maybe because it's expensive sometimes, even though it's really not. But most people just don't think in a preventative or preemptive fashion. So most people are like, ooh, I've gotten a B12 injection because I felt a little run down or sick. Like by the time you feel that way, it's way too late. So what we were trying to do, and if you look at, again, conservative alternative treatments for things like cancer, you'll probably run into something called like Gerson therapy, which is, again, a very high dose vitamin C therapy. But there's been all sorts of research done on vitamin C therapy, also glutathione intravenous injections, and how that helps, again, with phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification, which, again, for myself, a big deal. Also, high-dose vitamin C can create some of that cellular autophagy that we were talking about, where you kill off the cells that are not so good anymore, which are cancer cells, along with some other things. So I just think it's a good thing to do. This is not how you get your vitamins. It's more for, again, It may be a little bit of a stress to the system. I feel a little drunk after I do it.
Yeah.
Like it really suppresses me.
There's a ton of magnesium in it too.
Yeah. So you're getting a lot of that parasympathetic kind of effect. But at the same time, like your body is having to kind of, if you're killing off a bunch of cells and going through a higher metabolic rate, the mitochondria are kind of upkicked a little bit. Like you're working harder than you normally would. But again, it's the back end effects on that.
Mm-hmm. She's also doing ozone now.
Which I'm going to ask her about this time, which I may do. So we'll see. I need to look further into, I know ozone is used for pathologic insult, like if you have tendon injuries and things like that, they'll pair Prolo with ozone. Also for cancer treatment, ozone with hyperbaric therapy is used quite a bit to basically supersaturate red blood cells with oxygen, or even the cancer cells themselves, because if they're in an oxygen-rich environment, they basically can't operate, right? Because they have up to 15 to 16 insulin receptors on a cancer cell, so they're always looking for sugar. If you saturate them with oxygen, starve them with sugar with like a ketotic diet, like they're going to die, right? So let's talk about the last one. Sloan doesn't really do this.
I'm really glad that this is last.
I do this. So
you're skipping what I thought.
Let's talk about that.
Oh.
She's talking about putting the brown water up the brown hole.
Don't say it like that.
That's what it is.
Oh,
talking about
gross.
coffee enemas. And she's like, oh, she's so embarrassed. So let's talk about this because I have an interesting anecdotal input. So coffee enemas, funny story.
I don't know. I don't know where this is going.
Well, no, we do a white elephant exchange, Christmas gift exchange of my parents every other Christmas. And this year, I saved the box from our Australian enema kit, which an enema kit, I'll link in the show notes, is a stainless steel bucket, a hose, and basically a coffee strainer and the coffee. And it's this high-grade organic coffee. And we saved the box because like, oh, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to put a really good gift inside this box. And everything be like, what the heck is this? Well, that's exactly what happened. Funny thing was, they opened the box, and it was kind of just like,
this is weird.
Silent. Yeah. Nobody, like, everybody laughed, and like, nobody was like, wanted to say, why do you have this?
I did the same thing to my dad's present because obviously we had 2 enema kits.
Yeah.
And don't
share enema kits.
He nearly keeled over.
Yeah.
He laughed so hard because he thought I was giving him an enema kit.
But let's talk really quick. So again, coffee enemas. A lot of people would say this is insane. Why are you doing that? There's been a lot of negative side effects. There have been people that have died from basically having some sort of a toxic effect from not sterilizing utensils well while they're doing this, especially if they're not in a clinical setting. But if you're smart, or at least have common sense, maybe not even smart, you can get away with this. I was trying this more from an experimental standpoint. I am trying to remember the Ben Greenfield podcast that I listened to, read his book. I'll try to find the link. But basically, he was talking about the benefits from, again, a detoxification standpoint, how you basically up-ramp bile activity both in your gallbladder and your liver when basically coffee gets shot up your keister.
Well, it's the caffeine hits receptors that stimulate the liver and the gallbladder.
And then, there's a lot of things that I think are anecdotal. Again, you'll see things like coffee enema. We've talked a lot about cancer. I hate to even bring that up from the chiropractic realm because it just gets kind of beat to death with stuff that I think is pseudoscience. But it's obviously an enema is going to clean you out. That's not the purpose of this. It's to up-ramp liver function to, again, increase both phases of detoxification. Supposedly, it helps with a little bit of like belly fat loss, central adiposity. I don't know how much truth there is to that from the research standpoint. I haven't looked into it a lot. I'm going to tell you my personal experience. I don't like them. So when I'm not saying like the process isn't pleasant for anybody.
Nobody.
The reason I don't like it, I think even though like you listen to some of these biohacking podcast hosts and they say, ooh, it up ramps your metabolism, like you're just a beast afterwards. I think it slows my way down. I stay way more bloated. I actually see like that I hang on to a little more like belly fat, whether that's bloating or not. I just don't feel as well. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't think I am. I think I got the process down pretty well. So I don't really do them anymore. I did them on and off for 2-3 months. I really don't do it anymore. That's just my kind of personal experience with it.
I noticed that for like an hour or 2 afterward that I just feel kind of crummy. And I don't know if that's just kind of the whole process isn't enjoyable. And so I just kind of ramps me up and I don't like it, or if it's the detoxification that makes me feel crummy.
Yeah.
But I've never noticed any sort of like bloating or anything like that.
But I'm kind of done with that one. Maybe we'll revisit it at a later time. I won't be re-gifting the enema kit, so it'll stay there, obviously. So we'll see what happens with that. And I know a lot of people out there are probably like, what the hell?
Yeah, where did this go?
I told you this is fringe stuff. And again, these one of these things, maybe like I'm willing to try that. Maybe you have a specific issue. Maybe you have colon issues. Maybe you just need to clean stuff out. Mm-hmm. But if you can digest stuff better, maybe that helps up your energy level, you feel a little bit better, and then it sets off a cascade for these other things. So I'm trying to reverse engineer a kind of a health shift here. The last one, which actually has the most
oh yeah, I don't do this
research behind it, the most time of humans practicing this would be meditation. This has become wildly popular in the last decade. I'm going to talk about some books that I've read on this, but meditation has become so popular because with social media, there's been a lens that's been focused on it from your biohackers, your high performers, people like Tim Ferriss. You get into basically anybody that's into wellness is preaching the benefits of meditation. I started messing around with this in probably 2006, 2007, after I graduated college. I was living in Alaska and I kind of was into that stuff. And I read a book. I read 2 books at one time. The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Doidge, which actually has a ton of research looking at research on monks. I think a lot of it was done at Stanford. And just kind of looking at fMRI and how the actual changes on your brain, and then looking at the neuroplastic effects. I also read The Power of Now, which kind of talks about meditation, but it's more about basically being in the now and how you can use meditation to do that. And that's Eckhart Tolle. Very popular books. I'm sure a lot of people have read them. A couple other books that are really good. One book that you got me, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. Great book. It's not a book about meditation. It's actually talking about mindset. But I think a good way to shift your mindset is through meditation. And I'm not going to talk about the specifics of it because I think everybody's practice is far different. Mine has changed from what I thought meditation was to what I think it really is, and also how I did it versus how I do it now. And I've used every app that's out there. I've read numerous books. Another one that's great is Evolve Your Brain by Joe Dispenza, who is actually a chiropractor. His talks a lot about more of the power of neuroplasticity and manifestation of the mind, which is still meditation. His very, very quick story, he's still out there talking about kind of mindfulness and everything. He was in a terrible triathlon accident, wrecked his bike, broke, I want to say 60 bones in his body, and basically laid in a bed for 6 months and said, I will not have all the surgeries, and whether you want to call it miraculous or not, but healed himself without any kind of like hardware or anything like that, and now he's out there teaching all this stuff. Meditation is probably the most powerful thing that I do to shift my mindset to a place where I'm not reactionary. I kind of have a pause in between what gets said and what I say. It's also just it's a time to kind of meditation. I will talk about one specific is not emptying your mind. It's kind of like realizing things are always going on, but you don't have to react to them, like I said. But you're going to see that like more and more it's coming out that all your high-level corporate executives, all of these high-level financial managers, your big, Tony Robbins, all these people, they've been meditating for years. It's not a secret, right? That there's a reason that for thousands of years, monks and martial artists, and you could throw prayer into there, like deep meditative prayer. All of these people have been doing this, whether it's spiritual connection or not. There's obviously massive benefits, and if we're talking about energy shifts and mindset shifts to then have a cascade or a ripple effect into other areas of your life, that's a huge one for me. A lot of people don't like to do it because they can't quiet their mind. I don't think the goal is to quiet our mind. I think the goal is, like I said, to not be reactionary, which is probably why it's become so popular with corporate executives and financial managers, because in our day and age, I think, what was the stat that I saw? We make about 5,800 key decisions a day now. They equate that to, I think this is in one of Daniel Lieberman's books, they equate that to an entire lifetime worth of decisions for somebody that lived 100 years ago. We're doing that in a day.
Yeah.
So if I can use something like meditation to shift my, not necessarily consciousness, but my state of mind to one of sift thoughts or kind of like file thoughts, and make sure that I'm always focusing not necessarily on the now, like it's not the power of now, it's the power of what do I need to focus on right now, right? I'm not trying to like say, ooh, I live in just for the moment. No, like there may be a million things as a business owner, a husband, a health advocate, an athlete that I need to be doing or thinking about, but there's usually only one thing that I can focus on right now, and that's really helped me.
And I said that I don't do this, and I said it very like, oh, I don't do that. Like, I don't find value in it. But it's probably the number one thing that I should do. But we just had our culture index done, like our personality profile, which was pretty incredible. I loved it. It was refreshing. It was not refreshing, but it justified a lot of things that I feel on a day-to-day basis for me. But I am a very social person. I get energy and I feed off of being around people and having relationships. And so anytime I'm like by myself, I start to get into that like lull. Like I don't like it. And so in the meditative state or in a prayer state, like you just feel kind of like my mind. I want to talk. I want to be around someone. I don't like being by myself. So I found like I've tried to meditate and I'll like fall asleep. Like
I bring this up at the like eighth or breathing class that I talk about.
Or I get stir crazy.
Like a lot of people, when you do breath hold work or just breath work, they get very anxious and very like, I don't like this. I want to escape. I want to breathe normal. That's why we're doing this. That's why you work on breath. That's why you work on meditation. I'm going to bring up 3 examples and then we'll cut this off here. Gary Vaynerchuk, who I follow a lot, and a lot of people probably do, he talks a lot about going all in on your strengths. I thought I bought into that for a while. Then we did this culture index personality profile, and talking with the guy that was explaining that to us, he goes, this is kind of a roadmap to who you are, but it's more of like, hey, this is who you are, accept that. As of late, I had read part of this book a long time ago, Mindset by Carol Dweck, and then I'm listening to the audio version again. If you have ever read or listened to that book, it basically says the exact opposite. Is that if we think of our mindset is fixed, right? Is my personality is fixed traits, we see those are the people that never change, right? If I think of myself as having a growth mindset, that I may not be great at something, but if I can change that, and some of the examples they used are like, we've all heard like the Henry Ford stories and Walt Disney, how they were not the greatest people in the world at what they did, or got told they suck, and look where they ended up. But they were cashing in on their talents, but they had to continually grind at it at the same time. I think if we say, well, I'm a very social person and I feel very frantic or anxious to do that, so I'm not just going to work on it, I think we're missing a huge piece of, like, we're not saying, like, the goal A of meditation is not get better at it. It's just to do it,
it's
right?
a practice, yeah.
B, when we're in a fixed mindset versus growth, that is just like being in a fixed health mindset. So if I'm like, this is the way I am, it's very hard to dig myself out of this rut, you're not going to have change.
Or this is my genetics.
Yeah, and we give ourselves outs in that way. I do agree with some of all of that, going in all in on your strengths. Yeah, in a business standpoint, yes. I want people around me that fill in the gaps of my shortcomings there. In my personal life and everything else, not really. I want to be nobody's ever fully realized in their life, but you're trying to fully develop yourself to learn whatever you need to learn in this lifetime. When you look at the culture index saying this is who you are, what would be interesting to me that we didn't bring up with the individual that works for them is, what does it look like every 5 years? I think if your culture index looks the same in 5 years, there's something wrong with you, not the test.
I believe they said that it would be the same.
And that's what I don't agree with. So that would be interesting, and I'm going to challenge them. I'm going to ask to do it in 5 years from now and see if it's the same, and I hope it's not. If I'm the same in 5 years from now...
Do you think your patience will increase?
Probably not. I don't even want to do that in 5 years. I want to do it in a year and see if it's different. But all I'm going to say is, if I know those are my core things, well, that's almost like getting empirical data on blood test. If I know my liver enzymes are raised, well, why wouldn't I work to lower those? Right. If I know my patience is terrible, why wouldn't I work on it? I'm not just going to say full steam ahead, I'm impatient.
Well, because I think the other side of the argument would be you are successful in the way that you're successful because you're impatient.
But who knows? In this, I saw a very good quote or a statement from Brian McKenzie, who's part of Laird Hamilton's team with XPT, who's working with, I think his first name's Eric Huberman, who's a researcher for Stanford. And he was basically saying in this post, like, we've put self-imposed limitations on human physiology and psychology. Like, we used to think we could only do this, and we're finding out in a very cool way that there may be no limits. Not like no limits, like, like rap. No, I was thinking like No Limit Soldier.
I don't know that.
Oh, dear Lord. But there may be no limits. So then if we say, this is the way I am, and I'm going to not cash in on that, but like I may not be able to change my patience, I may not be able to change that, like, and I'm successful because of that, well, who knows what I could do if I could change that. And some people would say, well, that's wasted energy. Like, continue putting your energy into what you're doing.
Good thing you have so many and you're doing all these fringe things.
And that's right. And that's what I think, this is why I do that. Mm-hmm. Like, health is my profession. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, health is not their profession. But if your health is in line and all of those parts of health are in line, man, your energy is unbounded, and maybe there is no cap on that. Now you can go write the book on what you want to do, be the best lawyer, be the best mom or dad. And that is not going to help. Like, it is never going to work with poor health. Mm-hmm. I don't care. You can get by for a while. You can compensate, just like somebody coming in with an injury. You can compensate for a while. Something's going to happen, right? Yeah. And it's not about being perfect, right?
Well, and I wasn't saying, I don't do meditation because I'm a social person. I don't enjoy meditation. Right. And I said,
I don't enjoy.
This is the one.
I don't enjoy a salad as much as an orange slice either.
This is the one thing that I need to do. It's just like yoga to me.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I love it, but during it, I
get so angry.
And just having to be like inward.
Yeah,
like,
I get that.
I want to talk through
yoga.
Like, I wanted to have conversations. I want to like huff and puff and like I need encouragement, but that's not yoga. Yeah.
So I have a lot of links to put in the show notes for this episode, just on things for you guys to chew on and kind of search around. Basically, I hope you guys got that. Like, obviously, you guys know we're far from perfect, but there are real struggles that we deal with, and we try to deal with them in the best way that we can based on our knowledge, but also based on who we are as of today, which I think should change. But we're trying to help you guys implement change in your life. So if you have questions about any of this stuff, you need somebody to help guide you, whether you're in the Birmingham area or not, like, get a hold of us. And we appreciate you guys watching today.
Can I vow something?
What's that?
I am going to start showing on social media some of my lows. Because I think that it's really important to be transparent. I hate people, that sounded bad. I don't like when people get on and they just air their dirty laundry, but if it can be encouragement and helpful to other people.
Well, yeah, that's good. That's good. Very nice posture. Yes. Encouragement. Here is my karma on you. Encouragement. Yes. Yes. Encouragement, my friend. Good. You like that? Yes. Good job. Encouragement. Yes. Great job.
I'm going to start exposing that a little bit.
I'll make a vow that anytime I eat an orange slice, I'll take a picture of it and put it on Instagram from now on.
It'll flood Instagram.
See you guys next time.